Hello everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. It's great to see so many of you on the webinar with us. So welcome to the webinar titled Stressed Out with Wi-Fi When Using Event Apps. We're hoping to give advice on overcoming the problems and understanding the alternatives available. So my name's Perriam, and I've been with the team here at Crystal for 7 years, working with a mixture of clients, including pharmaceutical, legal, commercial conference sectors. I'm delighted to be here today with my colleague Joe.
Hello.
It's great to see a number of our clients with us today. For those that are not so familiar with Crystal Interactive Meetings, we are the largest event technology company here in the UK. We specialise in providing engagement technology and support, including keypads, iPads and Wi-Fi across a wide range of meetings and events worldwide. So, firstly, we'd really like to hear from you today on what your top questions are. So we're using the Q&A function within the GoToWebinar taskbar. So please do send in your questions via that and we'll look forward to addressing them later. So we've got a number of objectives we want to meet today. The number one barrier our clients hit when trying to utilize event technology at their meetings is Wi-Fi provision. This session will discuss how to assess Wi-Fi, how to augment it if possible, and then how to discuss alternative solutions for when Wi-Fi is not up to scratch. I'm now delighted to hand over to my colleague Joe, who is going to discuss how to assess Wi-Fi provision and augmentation when appropriate.
Cool, thanks a lot, Caroline. So my name is Joe Probert, and I work alongside Caroline in the account management team here at Crystal Interactive, and I work with my clients, supporting them to deploy various event technologies at their events. And it's really great to see some of my clients on this call today, but it's also really great to see some new faces who I haven't met before as well. So I thought I would start by having a look at some common things that stress our clients out about using Wi-Fi at their events. So I've got here three kind of common things that we hear from our clients when they're looking to use Wi-Fi. Some of these may be really familiar to you. And if you've got some other things that you regularly come up against at your events, please feel free to pop them over to us in the question section, and we'll try to, help you out with them as best as we can, or get back to you after the webinar with a more detailed response if appropriate. I think the first one is, it's really complicated to log into this Wi-Fi, and that often comes back to the login. The way that clients have to log into the Wi-Fi network at the venue. So often they'll have to go through a paywall, or they might get timed out after a certain period of time. Perhaps the SSID or the network name isn't obvious that that's the Wi-Fi network that's been set up for that event. Another one is, why is it taking so long to download the app? And this comes down to the bandwidth provision at the venue. So, you're going to need to have an appropriate level of bandwidth for the number of people that you've got at the event who are all trying to download all potentially trying to download the app for the first time when arriving. And then finally, there's things like, I didn't get that poll at the same time as everyone else, or I didn't get that push notification or that pushed out slide at the same time. And this comes down to the number of concurrent connections that are available at that on that network. So it's really important when you're speaking to the venues about Wi-Fi that they're being set up for the number of people that you've got attending your event. So how do you go about assessing a venue's Wi-Fi capability? So when we work with our clients, we will often carry out a Wi-Fi assessment or a Wi-Fi audit of the venue beforehand. But what does that involve? So I think the most important thing is make sure that you're talking to the right person at the venue. So up until this point, you've probably been speaking with the venue manager, but that might not be the best person to speak to about the Wi-Fi. And actually, you need to probably be speaking to the IT manager or whoever is responsible for that network. Once you're speaking to the right person, I would say the first question you probably want to ask is, how are my attendees going to connect to the Wi-Fi network? Is there a paywall, and is it timed? So are my attendees going to get logged out after a certain period of time? Can they be flexible with that? Can they set something up specifically for my event? So what I mean by a paywall is this is where attendees have to sign in through a portal in order to access the internet. And sometimes they can be very straightforward, or sometimes there can be a number of steps they have to go through. There may be complicated or unique passwords they have to put in. So just make sure that you're aware of the steps that your attendees are going to have to go through. And can the venue set up a flexible SSID, or the network name that attendees have to search for in order to connect to the network? Next thing you want to ask is about the bandwidth at the venue. So is it shared across the venue or hotel? You know, if it is shared, you then need to make sure that it's then going to be suitable for you know, all the people that you've got coming to your event. So can that network cope with the, you know, the number of downloads that you're likely to experience at the very beginning of the event when people are turning up for the first time? And then finally, you want to look at concurrent connections. So when people are turning up to an event, they may have their phone, which has the event app already downloaded onto it, but they may also be turning up with a laptop or a tablet. So when you're now running an event with potentially 100 people, potentially they may be turning up with 3 devices each. So now suddenly you're looking at 300 devices all trying to connect to that network. So it's just about making sure that the network is going to be able to cope with those numbers. And then also making sure that when you have calls to action as part of your event, so potentially a live poll or live Q&A sessions, that's when you're going to get the majority of your audience all trying to engage with the app and use the Wi-Fi network all at the same time. So just ensure that the network is going to be able to cope with all of those connections. So once you've carried out this assessment, you're probably going to find for the majority of venues, the Wi-Fi is going to be sufficient to support an event app with no modifications required. However, some venues will require some enhancement or augmentation, which is something either we can provide or may just be a small tweak that the venue can do to enhance or augment that network. However, it is worth bearing in mind that for any of those augmentations, there may be a cost involved. So what do we mean by Wi-Fi augmentation? So for a lot of people, this is just about putting in more access points, and that does form part of the augmentation. However, it's worth considering the step beforehand, which is getting the internet set up correctly for your event. So trying to make sure that you've got a guaranteed bandwidth for your event, and making sure that it's uncontended, so that there's no one else within the venue or hotel that are also using that Wi-Fi network at the same time. Are there any firewalls in place? And can we set up a flexible SSID or network name for easy access for attendees? After that, then we want to have a look at the access points. So we want to have a look at how they're spread across the venue, making sure that they're the appropriate numbers in there, and then also focused in on the busy areas, so the reception area where people, as I say, are turning up for the first time and downloading that app, or in your main plenary areas where you're perhaps running, you know, your live polling and your live Q&A. That's when you're going to get the biggest demand on the Wi-Fi network. So it's about making sure you've got the, you know, appropriate numbers in those busy locations. Once that's all set up, you're going to want to test it. So you want to make sure that all of those access points are operational. there aren't any black spots or any areas of interference where you've set this up. And then finally, you might want to consider having some on-site support. So a dedicated Wi-Fi engineer, for example, who can make responsive changes during the event or troubleshoot any problems that occur. A lot of venues will be able to provide this, but for some, that support might be remote. So it might be, coming from off-site, in which case, yes, they're going to be able to, make those changes or, troubleshoot any problems, but there may be a time delay in that happening, which may have an effect on your event. So I've spoken to you about, how you might go about, assessing a Wi-Fi network, and after that assessment, how you might go about augmenting or enhancing that network to allow you to still use an event app or, a Wi-Fi or cloud-based solution. But my colleague Caroline is now going to speak to you about some alternative technologies that you could use that don't require access to the internet and may be suitable for your events.
Thanks very much, Joe. So yes, I'm now going to have a quick look at why some of our clients look at alternatives. So the one big reason is that just simply an internet connection isn't available at that particular venue that they've chosen to run what would be termed a traditional event app. They may have internet, but it might just not be of enough bandwidth to cope with the numbers and demand of your requirement. So data security is often a big issue for government-led events, or perhaps some large organizations don't like sensitive data being stored in the cloud. Obviously, looking at alternatives that don't require that can be preferable for those events. Cost is often quite a big factor. Some venue costs in various regions around the world of actually enhancing the bandwidth going into their venue or just utilizing their internet in the first place can be quite high and therefore cost prohibitive for your event. I think one of the biggest factors in actual fact is the type of audience and the type of meeting that you're actually looking to run. Different audience profiles are more receptive to using their own devices than others. And if your event requires constant interactivity throughout the day, delegates can become concerned about battery life or perhaps, roaming data usage when using their own devices. So what is the alternative to using a cloud-based event app solution requiring the internet? It's actually the setting up of an in-room network for your event. We use the term in-room, but this network can in fact cover the entire venue that you're using. By the term in-room network, we mean a solution where no data leaves the room and everything is stored and run from an in-room server which has no access to the internet. So the key benefits of this: no internet requirement, which leads on to the fact that it's simpler and easier to set up. No prior liaising with the venue is required, and you've got a dedicated team of experts who know all about that network running it for you. In-room networks can be scalable and secure. Only the provided devices can access the data that you're sending over your network. In the case of advanced handsets, we can now start talking about thousands of attendees participating in your meeting confidently, rather than hundreds. In-room networks bring enhanced control. This control is in terms of the speed of instant responses that you receive and the control you have in pushing out timely content and interactive exercises. You've also got control over distractions. If delegates are using a device dedicated for the purpose, then they can not be distracted by emails perhaps popping up on their phone or push notifications. So, would advanced handsets or iPads suit your particular event? The advantage of a keypad, for example, or an advanced handset is when you're doing lots of interactivity and Q&A sessions. Delegates can easily send in their thoughts and questions in a variety of ways. On the other hand, if it's a content-heavy meeting where the main objectives are around disseminating content, detailed slides and images, on an iPad, delegates can pinch and zoom and take notes on the actual content. Is the main objective for the meeting to be heads up? Do you want people focused on that stage, participating when you want them? Or do you want them perhaps heads down more, looking at the content in their own time on the provided iPads? Is the event focused around individual interactivity, or is group work more of an objective? The advantage, obviously, of an iPad here is it's got a larger screen, so delegates all around the table can see content and also see what they're submitting as a group. And then finally, it sounds a bit basic, but actually the setup of your event in a physical sense can often dictate the best technology. So for a theatre style event, the connector keypad would be preferable, as they can just be popped out on the seats. On the other hand, in a cabaret or classroom style setup, you've got more room for the delegates to be able to rest their iPads on the tables in front of them. So in summary, the 3 areas we covered today and our top tips for you to take away. When assessing the Wi-Fi, make sure a venue's Wi-Fi provision you can discuss that with an expert at the venue as soon as possible, as early as possible in your discussions. When augmenting a Wi-Fi network, remember to think about the bandwidth as well as the access points. You need to ensure that the bandwidth coming into the venue or dedicated to your particular event is sufficient. Consider whether you need expert Wi-Fi support on site to provide and manage this. When deciding on alternative solutions, think about the objectives of actually bringing the technology into the meeting. What do you want it to achieve for you? Is it interaction focused or is it content dissemination focused? So we have a couple of minutes left now, and we've had some questions come in. So we're just going to have a quick look at these. Basically, we have a question here. When carrying out live polling, we've got several questions coming in. Sorry. When carrying out live polling, would you recommend a keypad or an event app solution? That's a tricky and interesting one. It depends a lot on, I think, firstly, the quantity of polling that you're looking to do. So is it around lots of knowledge checking that's very important for every delegate to be able to participate in? Or is it more just temperature checks where a majority of a feeling from the room is adequate? I think it also comes down to how much time in the agenda you've got for polling. So if, for example, you've got speakers that you can talk to and you're confident they will be introducing polling well and give people time to get out their own devices, then an event app can be used very well. On the other hand, if it's lots of quick fire questions coming in, then a keypad would be preferable. Joe, we've got another interesting question coming in here. What would be the typical bandwidth need for an interactive event app?
Cool. So yeah, thanks Tim for sending that in. To be honest, I don't think there is a typical bandwidth for an event app, because it depends on so many different things. So it depends on the number of people and number of attendees who are using the app, and also depends on what you're looking to use the app for. If you're looking to do lots of engagement and live polling and live Q&A, that bandwidth requirement is going to be a lot higher than if you're just looking to use the app as a house for content. What I would say, so following this webinar, we are going to be sending out some Wi-Fi guidance notes, and those will, so within those Wi-Fi guidance notes, it does outline the kind of levels of bandwidth that you should be looking to get from a venue, depending on the number of people that you've got connecting and if they're going to be taking part in live polling and Q&A.
Thanks, Joe. And finally, we've got another webinar coming up later this month. Here's just a quick reminder about the more FAQs being answered on event app requirements, and there'll be a link to register for this webinar sent out in the follow-up email a bit later on. We just have another quick question here. Do you have a list of venues with good Wi-Fi? It's a really good question. There are some venue listings available on the internet if you search for that. We've used a couple in the past, and they've been very useful. The only thing I would stress is that the Wi-Fi provision within venues is actually improving all the time. So perhaps something published 6 months or a year ago could now even be better improved. So I'd always check every time you discuss an event with a venue what their latest Wi-Fi provision is. We hope that's been really useful for you today. Thank you ever so much for joining us. As I say, we will be in touch with some useful follow-up information, but please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any further questions. Thank you ever so much. Goodbye.